Hello everyone, here we are. We're going to do 2 Samuel chapter 10, and this is more about King David and the adventures that he had. So here we go. In the course of time, the king of the Ammonites died, and his son Hanun, H-A-N-U-N, succeeded him as king. David thought, I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me. So David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. When David's men came to the land of the Ammonites, the Ammonite commanders said to Hanun their lord, "Do you think David is honoring your father by sending envoys to you to express sympathy? Hasn't David sent them to you only to explore the city and spy it out and overthrow it?" So Hanun seized David's envoys, shaved off half of each man's beard, cut off their garments at the buttocks, and sent them away. When David was told about this, he sent messengers to meet the men, for they were greatly humiliated. The king said, "Stay at Jericho till your beards have grown, and then come back." When the Ammonites realized that they had become obnoxious to David, they hired 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers from Beth Rehob and Zobah, as well as the king of Maacah, M-A-A-K-A-H, with 1,000 men, and also 12,000 men from Tob, T-O-B. On hearing this, David sent Joab out with the entire army of fighting men. Now you remember, Joab is quite the warrior. He's the one that cut down Abner, really against David's wishes. The Ammonites came out and drew up battle formation at the entrance of their city gate, while the Arameans of Zobah and Rehob and the men of Tob and Maacah were by themselves in the open country. Joab saw that there were battle lines in front of him and behind him. So he selected some of the best troops in Israel and deployed them against the Arameans. He put the rest of the men under the command of Abishai, his brother, and deployed them against the Ammonites. Joab said, "If the Arameans are too strong for me, then you are to come to my rescue. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will come to rescue you. Be strong and let us fight bravely for our people and for the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his sight." Then Joab and the troops with him advanced to fight the Arameans, and they fled before him. When the Ammonites realized that the Arameans were fleeing, they fled before Abishai and went inside the city. So Joab returned from fighting the Ammonites and came to Jerusalem. After the Arameans saw that they had been routed by Israel, they regrouped. Hadadezer had Arameans brought from beyond the Euphrates River. They went to Helam, H-E-L-A-M, with Shobak, the commander of Hadadezer's army, leading them. When David was told of this, he gathered all Israel, crossed the Jordan, and went to Helam. The Arameans formed their battle lines to meet David and fought against him, but they fled before Israel, and David killed 700 of their charioteers and 40,000 of their foot soldiers. He also struck down Shobak, the commander of their army, and he died there. When all the kings who were vassals of Hadadezer saw that they'd been routed by Israel, they made peace with the Israelites and became subject to them. So the Arameans were afraid to help the Ammonites anymore. They got in trouble. All right, chapter 11. Okay, this is an important chapter, and it's sad, and it's interesting. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, R-A-B-B-A-H. but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. Now, you remember, their roofs were flat. They did a lot of stuff up on the roof. They ate up there, they rested, they gathered together, probably had company up there. It's just, that's the way it was. If you've ever seen the temple that Solomon built, it's very square and very flat on the rooftop. So he was walking around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Elram and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." You ever remember the band Uriah Heep? Okay, well, this is Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, "I am pregnant." Okay, so he's just gotten a married woman pregnant. So David sent this word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. David was told Uriah did not go home. So he asked Uriah, "Haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home?" Now, I think he wants him to go home and make love to Bathsheba to hide the pregnancy. That's what I'm getting from this. Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will do no such thing." Oh boy. Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. I think David got him drunk, hoping he would just go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, "Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So David's a straight up murderer, okay? A murder in his heart. So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, Joab sent David. He instructed the messenger, "When you've finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up and he may ask you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerub-Besheth? Didn't a woman drop an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Tebez? Why did you get so close to the wall?' If he asks you this, then say to him, 'Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.'" Now, we do remember that a woman dropped a smaller millstone on the head of somebody who deserved it. And they're calling him here Jerub, J-E-R-U-B, Besheth, but I'm not sure that I remember who it is. The messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had sent him to say. The messenger said to David, "The men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." David told the messenger, "Say this to Joab, Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say this to encourage Joab. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. I'll say, you know, I mean, I can't judge David. We all have wickedness that resides in our heart at one time or another. But, you know, and the Lord called David a man after his own heart. Now, I do remember the Lord threatening kings that tried to sleep with Sarah and saying, you're going to wake up dead if you touch her. But this is shifty. This is not, you know, this is not honorable. And I'm not going to attribute this behavior to the Lord. We're going to see other ways that David is a man after the Lord's own heart. This, I don't think, is one of them. But what this does show you is that God can use a murderer. God uses the person you would never believe. I mean, all of the people that hated Trump and said, no way, he's not fit. Those are the types of people that God uses. He picks people that we'd never believe and uses them. All right, chapter 12. The Lord sent Nathan to David. Remember, Nathan is the current prophet of the land, or at least to David. So the Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, now listen to this. Nathan said, there were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb, female lamb, he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. Uh-oh, David is missing the meaning of this parable. He thinks it's a true story. It's a parable. Then Nathan said to David, you are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah, and if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. In other words, that's how you committed murder. You used the Ammonites' swords to kill him. Now, therefore, the sword will never depart from your house because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. You know, Uriah had that one beautiful, lovely wife. Excuse me, I'm perspiring here. That one beautiful wife that he cherished. And David just manipulated and, you know, because he was scared because she was pregnant and he knew he'd done something wrong by sleeping with another man's wife. This is what the Lord says, out of your own household, I'm going to bring calamity on you. Before your very eyes, I'll take your wives and give them to one who's close to you, and he'll sleep with your wives in broad daylight. You did it in secret, but I'll do this thing in broad daylight before all Israel. Then David said to Nathan, I've sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, the Lord has taken away your sin. You're not going to die. But because by doing this you've shown utter contempt for the Lord, the son born to you will die. Oh, pardon me. After Nathan had gone home, the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife had borne to David, and he became ill. David pleaded with God for the child. He fasted and spent the nights lying in sackcloth on the ground. You know, remember when Moses was trying to manipulate to just get a glimpse of the promised land? And the Lord said, no, you made me look like an angry man in front of the Israelites. You didn't represent me right. You know, and he never backed down. No matter how many times Moses tried to cajole the Lord to change his mind, the Lord never changed his mind. He's not going to change his mind here with David either. The elders of his household stood beside him to get him up from the ground, but he refused, and he would not eat any food with them. On the 7th day, the child died. David's attendants were afraid to tell him the child was dead, for they thought, while the child was still living, he wouldn't listen to us when we spoke to him. How can we now tell him the child is dead? He may do something desperate. David noticed that his attendants were whispering among themselves, and he realized the child was dead. Is the child dead, he asked. Yes, they replied, he is dead. Then David got up from the ground. After he'd washed, put on lotions, and changed his clothes. Put on lotions, isn't that interesting? You know, we tend to think that, you know, even though this is ancient times, that they have very little. And in the very beginning, they did. But well, they had a lot of things, beautiful oils, and clearly they had lotions. After he'd washed, put on lotions, and changed his clothes, he went into the house of the Lord and worshiped. That's humility, people. How many people have you met that won't talk to God because my brother died, or my sister died, or my mother was killed? I hate the Lord. He allowed something like that to happen. This man was told directly by the Lord, I'm going to kill your son. And when it was done, David went into the house of the Lord and worshiped the Lord. That's the proper kind of humility we are to have, because God's sovereign and he can throw our souls into hell. We better worship. We better thank God for everything, and we better accept punishment like a man. That goes for you women too, you ladies. I mean, when we do something that we know is awful and the Lord punishes us, we need to stand and bear it. And praise the Lord anyway. I mean, we can cry, but you know what I'm saying? That's humility. That's loving the Lord more than anything. And we're going to hear more stories where, in the face of terrible tragedy, people stay close to the Lord anyway. They don't blame the Lord, okay? That's not a good thing to do, and it's really immature. But you can't expect someone who doesn't know the Lord to know how immature it is. It's just not a wise thing to do. All right. Then he went to his own house, and at his request, they served him food, and he ate. His attendants asked him, why are you acting this way? While the child was alive, you fasted and wept, but now that the child is dead, you get up and eat. In other words, they're thinking he's going to be worse because the child is dead. He answered, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knows? The Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he's dead, why should I go on fasting? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. In other words, I'm going to die and go to him, but he's never going to come back here. Okay? Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and he went to her and made love to her. She gave birth to a son, and they named him Solomon. Now see, there's the Lord's grace. When you stay in his will, when you're humble, when you accept that you did something wrong and that the Lord has a right to punish you, when you worship the Lord anyway, when everything is just going wrong, and this is extreme, clearly, look at how gracious the Lord was. He went to comfort his wife Bathsheba, made love to her, and they conceived Solomon, who was the greatest, wisest, and richest king that has ever been seen on this globe, and there's never been anyone like him since in terms of wisdom and riches. Never before and never since. Solomon was the greatest in those two areas, okay? That's God's grace. That's God loving David. That's a parent to a child, okay? So let's read that again. Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba. He went to her and made love to her. She gave birth to a son, and they named him Solomon. The Lord loved him, and because the Lord loved him, he sent word through Nathan the prophet to name him Jedediah. Okay, so I guess that was his original name. Meanwhile, I didn't know that. Meanwhile, Joab fought against Rabbah of the Ammonites and captured the royal citadel. Joab then sent messengers to David, saying, I have fought against Rabbah and taken its water supply. Now muster the rest of the troops and besiege the city and capture it. Otherwise, I'll take the city and it will be named after me. So David mustered the entire army and went to Rabbah and attacked and captured it. David took the crown from their king's head, and it was placed on his own head. It weighed a talent of gold, and it was set with precious stones. David took a great quantity of plunder from the city and brought out the people who were there, consigning them to labor with saws and with iron picks and axes, and he made them work at brickmaking. David did this to all the Ammonite towns. Then he and his entire army returned to Jerusalem. So I guess Joab was saying, look, I've got this city at bay, and if you don't come and take it, I'm going to take it and name it after myself. And so David went out to make sure that it was going to be his capture, his conquest. So that's it. And tomorrow we'll pick up with 2 Samuel 13. There are 24 chapters in this book, so we're just at the midpoint. I love you very much. You have a wonderful evening. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll pick it up here, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.